Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ria Henry. I am a Workforce Development Coordinator for the City of Norwalk in partnership with Norwalk Acts. Thank you all for joining us today. This is our second quarterly Workforce Development Committee meeting. I don't know if my screen's different. Can you all see me on your screen, or are you seeing? Okay. Yes, so thank you for joining us for our second quarterly Workforce Development Committee meeting. Our last meeting was in March, and that was, our first meeting where we gave you a brief update on our efforts to date, and we're really excited to share some exciting stuff that we've been up to since then. So I will start by sharing my screen, and we're going to start off with our agenda for today. Apologies. One second. Okay. So, and thank you for joining us. So we'll start off by sharing just briefly our updates since our last meeting in March. Then we will have an exciting session from the workplace. We have Adrienne Parkman joining us today. She's the Chief Operating Officer of the workplace, and she will be talking to us about our local workforce investment board and talking about WIOA. If you're not familiar with WIOA, Adrienne will get you up to speed in that session. Followed by that, we will talk a little bit about the resources that we mentioned during our last meeting and some updates and demonstrations there. The job board session will be led by Fred Dimian. He is the president of Patu Solutions, and I will be talking a little bit about the resource guide. And then finally, we will close and have a few final announcements. So I just want to briefly get started. Okay, so I like to ground the conversation in why is workforce development so important here in Norwalk. So I started about 9-10 months ago, and the challenge here in Norwalk really is there is a demand, a great demand for skilled roles. And right now, currently, we have a lack of medium and high skilled talent to meet that demand. And that's due to, inconsistent communication and alignment among various stakeholders in this workforce development ecosystem. And so what that's led to is essentially below livable wages for many of our residents. I like to ground the conversation in numbers. And so in 2020, the United Way of Coastal Fairfield County presented a report, and about 43% of Norwalk households, so it's about, almost 1,500 households, are struggling to afford basic needs. Another statistic I wanted to share was that on average, 30% of Norwalk Public School graduates from the classes of, from 2016 to 2022 did not enroll in college or university within the first year after graduation. So our goal with our workforce development efforts really is to create this integrated, centralized workforce development infrastructure and a strategy for Norwalk that'll meet that employer-driven demand, that'll connect job seekers to different opportunities, employment and education opportunities, that'll lead to livable wage employment. So I just wanted to ground the conversation in that, and why it's so important that the cities need this investment in workforce development.
Hey, Ria, sorry to interrupt, but I think there's this high-pitched sound that's coming from your audio. I don't know if your computer's placed in an interesting area or something, but I don't hear it right now, actually. But we were hearing it before, so maybe it's done.
Okay, I'll mute myself for a second and see if it'll disappear. I will mute. Do you still hear it?
You say something else?
I think we're good.
Okay, we're good.
It's still there, but not as frequent. It was constant before, like a really high frequency squeaking kind of, but I don't hear it now. But anyway,
Sorry about that. I don't
no,
know.
okay.
So I just wanted to briefly provide an update on our efforts since our last meeting. So at our last meeting, we briefly talked about these resources that were in the pipeline. And that was the Norwalk Job Board and the Norwalk Referral Resource Guide. Since our last meeting in March, we have then launched the Norwalk Job Board and the Referral Resource Guide in April of 2023. And in May and in June, really focused on hosting these demo sessions to train community providers on how to use this resource. Later on today, we will be doing a brief demo of the resource guide. If you've missed any of those sessions, well, you got it today. And this resource is, amazing, and think that's really going to be a game changer for the community. In July, what we anticipate is we're really launching like a wide scale campaign, a marketing campaign for both the job board and the resource guide. So now I'm going to turn it over to Adrienne. Adrienne Parkman, she's on our steering committee, but she's also the Chief Operating Officer of the workplace. Adrienne will be leading the session to talk a little bit about the workplace and the function of the workplace, and then going into what is WIOA. So I will stop sharing and I will turn it over to Adrienne. Thank you, Adrienne.
Thank you very much. And, you teed it up and said it was exciting, and you put WIOA and exciting in the same sentence. And I got nervous because I've never used those two words together, but we will do the best that we can. And please, ask as many questions as you would like. So I'll start sharing my screen, and I'll try not to make this as painful as it could be, God knows. And it will not, we'll try to get through it as quickly as we possibly can so we can get to any questions that you may have. So the first thing, we always talk about all these letters we throw around, right? AJC, WIOA, WIOA, you hear all these letters, and, we're going to talk about what some of those things mean so you can get a full understanding of our system and kind of what some of those things mean. Okay, what is a workforce development board? That's always like, what is it that what is this thing, right? So workforce development boards are state and local, and they're connectors between U.S. Department of Labor and the local American job centers. Workforce development boards are statutorily created. They've been statutorily created since, I believe, the 1960s. So we have been known as private industry councils, WIBs, workforce investment boards, workforce development boards. We've been called a whole lot of things. And so the statute that our enabling legislation currently is called WIOA, Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. Prior to that, it was a Workforce Investment Act, or WIA. Prior to that, it was a Job Training Partnership Act. Prior to that, it was a Comprehensive Employment and Training Commission, as many of you might know, CETA. You can keep going back. It's just the alphabet soup of what we do. But the reason that we are created is to be that local convener in the regions that are designated by the governors of each state. So I will get into later, kind of the allocation process and how that works in terms of those dollars. But all the employment and training dollars that are allocated by Congress or appropriated by Congress to the U.S. Department of Labor are funneled through the state to the local workforce development boards. There are 5 in our state. There are about 600 workforce development boards across this country. Each state has to have a workforce development board. Some have one, they're called single state, and some have multiple. Years ago, Connecticut had 9. For those of you that have been around long enough to know that. Then we went to 8, and probably over the last maybe 10 years, we've been at 5. workforce development boards, okay? And so you can see that what the role is to develop the strategic plans and to set funding priorities for the region in terms of where those dollars go. So in the legislation, this is what it says that the local workforce development board is supposed to do. So this is what we do. We develop local plans, we build systems, and our role is to identify providers and of not only training, but our one-stops or AJCs, as you will hear more about. We say we're a local workforce development board. And like I said, there are 5 of us in this state, divvied up by governor determines those areas. There's also a state workforce board. That's also in the legislation. And the state workforce board feeds information down to help inform each of the 5 regions. And our state workforce development board is called now the Governor's Workforce Council. In the past, it was called CTEC, Connecticut Employment and Training Commission. So there's always different names that it's been called, but the legislation, the same enabling legislation that enables the local workforce investment boards, also enable the state board, which is now called the Governor's Workforce Council. And they have similar goals on a larger scale, of course, in terms of strategy, system building, and system alignment. Now to the wonderful person called WIOA, because like people like to talk about WIOA as like it's an individual. I'm gonna, you need to go talk to WIOA. I love that one. Like, I don't know what's his number. If you got WIOA's number, put it in the chat so we can all call him or her and find out who she is. So WIOA stands for the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. And it was passed in 2015. And it is, of course, we're under reauthorization. It's still out there. It's kind of a continuing thing with all these employment and training when they're going to be reauthorized. So the next iteration could be coming soon. Who knows? And it might change our system all upside down. We don't know. We wait to see what it looks like. So the 3 pillars are one-stop career centers. As you know, they're called American Job Centers now. So when the legislation was written, they were called one-stop career centers. Now it's branded American Job Centers. It also is there to make sure it's meeting the demands of businesses in our community, and also, support our regional economy. So that's the broad goals and pillars of WIOA. So American Job Centers. So what are AJCs? AJCs are our bricks and mortar buildings that provide services, employment and training services. In the past, they were the unemployment office. Then they were career centers, and now they're American Job Centers. And these centers house a lot of services for individuals. In the past, it would only house, Department of Labor, who would provide unemployment insurance, as well as some basic career services. As we've expanded, and I will let you see the slide on the required partners under the legislation that have to be attached to the American Job Centers. So when you go into an American Job Center, individuals get access to no-cost services. I don't like the word free, because free says to me no value. So there's always value to it. So there are no-cost services that individuals can get basic career services. They can get individualized services, as well as access to training dollars. There are over 2,400 job centers in this country. So again, 5 regions in Connecticut. The law says that each region has to have 1 comprehensive site. You can have several affiliate sites, satellite sites, however you want to call it, but the legislation only calls for 1 in each region. So in Connecticut, we can only have, the minimum we can have is 5, because we have 5 regions, but there are about 17 because we have affiliate sites. So in Southwestern Connecticut, our defined region, which goes from Beacon Falls down to Greenwich and over to Stratford, is a 20-town region that we are under, as a workforce development board, charged to serve. We have a comprehensive site in Bridgeport. We have a satellite affiliate site in Ansonia. We have one in Derby. We have one in Stamford. And we have a mobile career coach, if anyone have seen our mobile training. Winnebago that goes around and provides services. We have just opened, some activity in Norwalk, where I think Diana is on, who is there once a week to provide some access to services as well. Okay. So what are the core programs of the American Job Center? So you will see require partners. The legislation also does the funniest thing to me is it mandates partnership. Now, that seems like a hostage situation for most. You don't mandate a partnership. If you're a partner, you come to the table willingly. But in the legislation, it is required partners. So these are the entities and the programs that have to be a part of the American Job Center system. So you can see a lot of them are by Department of Labor. Those are the individuals that's the entity that administers these programs. So you can see the adult, dislocated worker youth, Wagner Pizer, unemployment, Job Corps, Youth Bill, trade, Title V program for older workers, farm workers, veterans program, second chance. Then you get down to, adult ed, voc rehab, TANF, community service block grants, and housing. All of those are required partners. So what does that mean? Every workforce development board has to have a memorandum of understanding with the entities in their region or in their state. A lot of them, we have them with the state agencies to have those services available to customers coming through our American Job Center system. So we have MOUs with every single one of these agencies, whether we have it at the local level, regional level, like for community service block grants, we work a lot with the community action agencies. So we have MOUs with all the community action agencies in our region. But for Department of Labor, who is the administrator of the programs you see, we have MOUs with the state, Department of Labor, and Department of Education, as well as Department of Corrections too, on some of our second chance programs. So you can see all of those are required in every area. So our WIOA adult program, what you're going to hear is when WIOA dollars are allocated to a state, the money goes to Congress. Congress does this wonderful formula that says, okay, we have this pot of money, we're going to divide it among our 50 states. They come up with a formula. It's based on your demographics of your state, how many are unemployed, underemployed, and have certain barriers. They send that money to the state. State of Connecticut gets that money, and then they have a formula that divides the money to each of our 5 regions. And they have to divide that money in 3 pots. So we get an allocation for adult, we get an allocation for dislocated worker, and we get an allocation for youth. Every region across the country, every 600 or so board gets the allocations in those ways from their Department of Labor. So the adult program, and this is just tells you who is there to serve. Serves individuals and help employers meet their workforce needs. It is priority of service for the adult money is for public assistance, low income, and basic skills deficient individuals. So if you look at what's the eligibility for an individual to receive services as a WIOA adult, when they come into a one-stop center. So if they come into a job center, they come in, everyone has access, no eligibility for you to receive basic services. So if you come in, you want to go to a workshop, you want to use some of the equipment, whether it's the computers, the phones, whatever, all that is just open to anyone that wants to come in. If you want to now get into some case management or you want to get to training, you have to be eligible in order to get to that next level. So one of the eligibilities is adult. So adult 18 years or older, authorized to work in the United States, and if male, selective service registration required. family income at or below 100% of poverty line or 70% of the lower living standard. That's the eligibility for an individual going through an adult program, or who was going to be deemed eligible as an adult. Okay. Now, if you come in and you're a dislocated worker, dislocated workers are separate eligibility. So these are individuals who have a job loss, mass layoff, have been transitioning due to some economic challenges. And if you are a dislocated worker, here is the eligibility. You have been terminated or laid off, received notice of termination, eligible for or have exhausted your unemployment benefits, has demonstrated an appropriate attachment to the workforce, but is not eligible for unemployment insurance and unlikely to return to a previous industry or occupation, has been terminated or laid off as a result of permanent closure, was self-employed, but is unemployed as a result of economic conditions in the community, or is a displaced homemaker no longer supported by another family member. So there's a checklist that has to happen when an individual goes into our job centers to see if they qualify as an adult or dislocated worker. And again, you have to be one or the other for you to be able to access case management, some of the supports that we provide, whether it's transportation, stipends, needs-based supportive services, all of that, and or training. You have to qualify under one of those. So looking at our American Job Centers that we have, whether it's affiliate or a comprehensive site, as I showed earlier about what the role of the Workforce Development Board is, one of the things it isn't is direct service provider for the job centers. So what the law requires every Workforce Development Board to do is to go out to bid to have an entity provide those services on the ground. So we go out to bid every couple of years. Our current provider is Career Resources. Career Resources is our vendor that provides the direct services in the actual job center. So their staff sit in those job centers to provide those services. And they've been our provider since, I believe, 2004. They weren't our first provider. We had a company called, entity called JobLink. And then we moved to Career Resources. And Career Resources has been that entity since then. And we always like to say we birthed them because we spun them off from the workplace many years ago, probably about 30 years ago. So we're glad that they're still strong and viable and growing. It's always good when you see your kids grow up and get on their own, isn't it? It's always a lovely thing. So we also have what's called our youth program. And that is another funding source. The legislation, if you have some time, you want to read all 2,000 pages of the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, feel free. It's lovely reading. You know, you can, over the holiday weekend, you have nothing to do under your umbrella with your, libation. You can, of course, read WIOA. So it is very clear in the legislation that youth is treated separately. Youth eligibility does not go through the American Job Center. Youth eligibility is separate. Why they did that, I don't know, but they did do that. So the program is for individuals ages 14 to 24 who face significant barriers. And what we have is in-school and out-of-school programs. In-school is for those that are 14 to 21, and they have to be pregnant or parenting, an offender, homeless or runaway, involved in the foster care system, basic skills deficient, English language learner, or a youth who needs additional assistance, whether because they have a disability or some other reason. And our in-school program is limited. The legislation only allows us to provide 25% of our dollars, our youth dollars, to go to in-school. Minimum of 75% out of school, maximum of 25% in school. And that was a change from WIA to WIOA. They wanted you to really focus on the out of school youth, which are, of course, the need. Out of school youth. 16 to 24. So these are individuals who have to face one or more of the following barriers. So they have to meet one of these. They have to be a high school dropout, has not attended school, even though they should have for 45 days, for the most recent 45 days of the calendar year, pregnant or parenting, have a disability, an offender, homeless, involved in any stage at the foster care system, low income, and another barrier. Low income and is a recipient of a high school diploma, but they're basic skills deficient. And how do we determine that? We do this test called a CASAS test that determines your math and your reading levels. If you're deemed basic skills deficient by that test, and that test is one that the Department of Education requires us to use. If you are deemed basic skills deficient, then you're eligible. Or you're low income and is an English language learner. Or you're low income and you need additional assistance, which is usually you have some type of documented disability. So that's the criteria to be determined eligible as a WIOA out-of-school youth. Okay. What's next? So funding, we always like to get into funding because I always like to have folks to see what the reality is. So when, Joe Carbone, our CEO, always talks about when he came here 27 years ago, the funding levels are the same as they are today. Our need has grown. And so as we are a workforce development board, we're also a 501c nonprofit organization. Not all workforce development boards across this country are. Some are operated by county government. Some are operated by college systems. It all depends on how it is operated in a particular state. So we always look at our role as one of our roles is the Workforce Development Board. But because we are 501c3, as long as we're operating in our mission, we can provide additional services. So we have not only programs in Southwestern Connecticut, but we also have statewide programs. And we have programs operating in 5 other states outside of Connecticut. So we have been very, very aggressive about going after additional dollars to fill the gap and to make sure folks are getting the services they need. So we look at the dollars that come to the state. So I told you how Congress does this wonderful allocation to the U.S. Department of Labor, and then they break it down to the state. So you can see here under adult, this has been the funding for the U.S. Department of Labor of how much they've received over the last couple of years in terms of adult money. This is the state allocation, and this is what we receive. So under the adult for the last few years, it's gone up a little bit. So around 1.5, last year, 1.8 million for adult services. You'll see 1.96 for youth and 1.69 for dislocated worker. So you can see we get about 5.5 million in WIOA dollars. And that is not a lot, as we all know. The need has grown. And this number was the same 27 years ago when we had about 12,000 people in our system. And we probably have double or more than that now with greater needs. And the allocation has not changed at all. So that's why we go after a lot of competitive grants and to make sure that we're filling those gaps. So how does it fare across the state? You will see the same thing. We usually, out of the 5 boards in terms of allocation, probably we go from number 2 or 3 with South Central, which is New Haven. So you will see us here, our funding of all WIOA and WIA allocations over the last few years. That's us. Southwest. North Central is Hartford, which serves the whole greater Hartford area. This is their allocation that they've had. South Central is New Haven area. Eastern Connecticut is, from north to south of Eastern Connecticut, that whole geography, they have a lot of area, not as many people. And Northwest is the Waterbury up to Torrington over to Danbury area. And you can see the allocations that they receive as well. So for 22-23, this has been our allocation. Again, we are, second, if you're looking at, in terms of distribution. Sometimes with New Haven, it can flip-flop depending on the year. We've seen New Haven have a little bit more, but we're just about the same. And you can see the breakdown by adult, adult, youth, and dislocated worker as well for all of the regions, and see what that funding looks like. And so we all try to be very, very aggressive about filling that gap, because $1 million to have some of that has to, of course, support 5 million. If you're looking at the two funding areas of adult and dislocated worker that actually support the one-stop, you can see for us, it's maybe about $3 million that it has to support all this, the facilities, the staff, and also provide the training services as well. So just wanted to give you kind of an overview of that. I know it's a lot of information. It's always, confusing, and hopefully I demystified and in an easy way for you to look at some of it, but happy to take any questions or to drill down more for anyone that has any questions.
I just want to say thank you for that breakdown. It was really great.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it was really great. For me, I've never had to walk into an unemployment office, and I've just always felt that I can sympathize with the act and the mission for someone to walk into one, and how challenging it can be, and almost, I don't want to say it, lack of a better term, a little bit demoralizing.
Yes.
And the messaging that you guys have created around this now, American Job Centers, and all the benefits that you guys that this offers, is just awesome. It completely spins the messaging on it to not being such a negative thing in your life to have to walk into one of these things. So it's really nice and refreshing to hear. Thank you for all that.
You're quite welcome. Thank you. Mike.
Hi, Adrian. I also want to thank you for that presentation. Much appreciated. I've heard lots about all those acronyms, so thanks for helping to demystify those. Just a couple quick questions.
Sure.
Is Career Resources budget operating the American Job Centers? Is that separate? That doesn't come out of the...
Yes, it is. It's out of this budget.
What's that?
Yeah, it comes out of this budget.
So it comes out of the, so it's not like it's additive. But both Career Resources and the workplace has to fund this whole area, I guess.
Correct. So our contract with Career Resources to operate the one-stop is probably about $2.5 million, 2.2 to 2, depending on the year. So about $2.5 million to operate our one-stops in the entire region.
Okay. And then the second question, and I think you covered this a little bit, but it looks like all these services are for workers who are legal in the U.S. So we end up having a lot of clients who come to us as undocumented immigrants who want to work. We do have an immigration program in Norwalk where we help them get green cards and get on the path to citizenship. But it sounds like to get the services in your centers, you have to be a permanent citizen, correct?
That's correct, because they're all federal dollars. So the feds do not allow us to provide any dollars to individuals who are undocumented.
Okay, thank you.
You're quite welcome. Lisa.
Thank you. I have a question on the WIOA qualification regarding if you're a male. Selective service registration is required. Specifically, what does that mean? I think it could be a deterrent for a lot of male Connecticut residents.
Selective service is usually something that happens in, like, I think your senior year of high school. So if you're in school, generally the selective service, you just register for the draft. I guess that's something that's still on the books. If you are older than, and I got to get the age, if you're older than 50 something, which so determined what year you were born, you don't have to no longer register. So there's there's a cutoff of an age where you no longer have to register. If an individual was incarcerated or there was some other reason why they did not register for the selective service, like I said, 99% of the time it's done in school and kids are automatically registered for selective service, then what they would have to do is write a document. There's a document that you fill out as to why you did not register, whether you were incarcerated, maybe you dropped out of school, did not know you had to register, and each workforce development board can sign the waiver for our documents that we've actually done our due diligence to see that you're registered. If you're still eligible, we can register you very quickly. That's a very simple process. But if you are not and you're past the age of registration, then we can, of course, we can waive it if you write a statement as to why you didn't.
So all males in high school have to register for the selective service?
Yeah, it's been since,
I'm aware of that.
yeah, they register you for the draft, right? Jesse, weren't you registered for the draft? Did you know it?
I have no recollection of that. I don't know.
That's why they do it in high school in the middle of the second period and you don't know what you're signing, but and you can go check because there's a website that you can check and you can put your name and your social security number in and you can see if you're registered for the selective service, and I bet your name comes up.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Now, women, we don't have to register, so we are good. We won't be drafted anytime soon. So I think I might be too old to be drafted for anything at this point, but you never know. I still think I have a few cheerleading days in me, but who knows? Any other questions? And if you do, just please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to answer any questions, happy to explain anything further if you need any additional information.
Thank you, Adrienne.
You're welcome.
And we'll be including this information. I will be sending a follow-up email to all of you after.
I
with all
can
the
send this
information.
over to you. I'll send the slides over to you. You can send them out for that.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. I will share my screen again. And we are moving to our next segment, which is the job board. We will have Fred Dimian. He is the CEO of Patu Solutions here in Norwalk. Talk a little bit about the Norwalk job board. This job board is something that's been in the pipeline and we officially launched in April. So I invite Fred to give us a little bit more insight on what we've been up to on the job board.
Okay. Thank you, Federia. So the job board is currently launched. It resides within the Greater Norwalk Chamber of Commerce website. So thank you, Brian, for your hosting and allowing that. The job board is pretty straightforward and easy to use. So if you're currently registered as a Norwalk Chamber of Commerce member, you automatically get access to it. If you are not registered under the Chamber of Commerce, it's free to register. You do not have to become a member of the Chamber of Commerce, but we felt it was best to be embedded within there. This is a hyper-local job board, so it's for the greater Norwalk area. It's really focused on small and medium-sized businesses. Thank you for that, Ria. There is no degree requirement, and we are asking employers who post positions to allow career advancement opportunities. To be clear, none of this is mandated, so you can't post positions, but it is a softer, let's say, medium request that employers do both pay livable wages as well as allow career advancement opportunities. So we currently, I'm going to thank Luann at Nuvance who posted some positions on there. We currently have a few positions posted, and we are allowing this to new positions to be posted. It's pretty easy to post. The posting cost is $1. We have allowed premium postings also to be $1. We decided to put some barrier in, so there's not a lot of spam, and that there's some paywall, although it's a pretty insignificant paywall at $1. The premium postings do also repost the positions to Google Jobs. So in addition to getting the exposure at the Norwalk Chamber site, you will get it exposed on Google job board, so they could be searchable there, which is good. There is some linking within there. You could repost a position on LinkedIn, and you could also post a position from a company hosted website onto this pretty quickly. Maria and the team and Jesse put together this really nice, I did not do this on the right-hand side, the whole QR code that's scannable. It's awesome. So really easy to use. I think we're also putting together some video tutorials, which will make it pretty easy to use. But it takes, I've done it myself, takes about 2 minutes to post a resume. It takes about 2 minutes to post a position. You can put the positions on there and have the application be on your company's website if you do require that level of kind of adherence to policies. The QR code's pretty cool, so thanks again for that, Ria. I think it just fast tracks you or to takes you to that site pretty quickly. Was there another page?
No, this is the
Okay.
last page.
Cool.
Thank you for that, Fred.
Okay. Great.
So this is we're working on a larger marketing campaign for the job board, and so there will be more to come on that, marketing to the community at large. And we do have a couple partnerships with community providers that'll get job seekers job ready to post on the job board. So Fred and the entire team has been very instrumental in this, job board getting to where it is, and they continue to work very tirelessly with it. And so I want to thank everyone for all the hard work that they put into it. I next want to talk about the resource guide. I just want to briefly go over what this resource guide is for anyone that hasn't heard of it or hasn't joined one of our sessions. So this Norwalk Workforce Development Referral Resource Guide is the centralized resource dashboard that'll be frequently updated that advertises different workforce development related trainings, services, opportunities that are specifically available to Norwalk residents. The idea about this first iteration of this guide is really focused on case managers or for use by case managers and social service providers. And the goal is to create a 2.0 version of the dashboard that will be more resident facing. So why did we create this resource guide? During our work in our workforce development endeavors, we had quite a few conversations with stakeholders, and the feedback that we received was that there was like a lack of coordination and communication. People weren't very clear, and then also that there wasn't a centralized place to find out what exactly was available to different to residents in terms of workforce development trainings and opportunities. And so that was when the idea for this resource guide was born. If you've joined us for one of our demo sessions, or if you're on our steering committee, you've probably seen this 16 times, but I just wanted to briefly share, do a brief demo of the resource guide. So if you've seen our out of school time portal, it's set up quite similarly. It tells you what the resource guide is, the function. It offers insight into different supportive services, training, and educational opportunities. We will be having a how-to guide, a demo video. We're currently working on the translation. We will be translating it into Spanish and Haitian Creole. Understanding eligibility is essentially a glossary of terms that frequently appear in the guide, given an explanation of what those are. And then if you click this Contact Us feature, it will pre-populate my email, so you can email me. I'm the point of contact regarding anything related to the resource guide. Step one would be to do a customized search if that's your chosen method. We have provided a couple suggested keywords for you to search. You could search healthcare, and it would populate all programs that have healthcare on the program's profile page, in the description. Anything that mentions healthcare, it would then pop up and populate here. If you are just looking at the different opportunity types, you can also filter by opportunity type. Education, financial support, supportive services, and then training. Another option is to also filter by zip code. So these are Norwalk zip codes. You can filter by proximity, so within 5, 10, or 15 miles, or if you're looking for like a virtual program. If you're on this site and you're not sure, you just want to browse around and see what's available, you can also just browse through all 49 of the programs. And this is an exhaustive list. We're still working on adding additional programs, but all the programs that are on here have been verified by the organization that the information on here is accurate and up to date. So below, you will see the program's name, the location of the program. And if you hover over this logo, it tells you the type of opportunity, the method of delivery. So in this case, it's in person, and then the cost associated with the program. If you were to click on this, it would take you to that individual program's profile page. To the left, it has some of the information that we captured before. So the location of the program, the opportunity type, the name of the organization, the location of the organization, which in some cases is different than the location of the program, the cost associated with it, and the method of delivery. You can also click on this and it'll open up to Google Maps to help you with navigation. If you click on this logo here, it will open up the organization's website. Below, we have a link to the website as well, and that is because we do have an export to PDF function. So you can turn this page into a printable PDF document that you can share with clients, or if you want to utilize yourself. A program point of contact. And so this, I just want to talk a little bit about the verification process. It took a while because we really wanted to ensure that each individual program had a specific point of contact. It wasn't just to the organization, but to an individual that was associated with the specific program. And so this has been verified by the organization that this is the correct point of contact. So when people reach out, they'll actually get to talk to a person. If you scroll down, suggested requirements. So these are the suggested requirements to qualify for the program. We always recommend that you still check on the organization's website to verify the eligibility and the requirements. Below, there's a description of the program, so what the program entails, the length of the program, the credentials associated with it, and whatever supportive services might be built in. And then below, there is program offerings. In some cases, some of the programs featured only have one offering, and in this case, it has multiple offerings. And then the date the program was last updated, so people have an idea of how current this information is. So you've seen it before. Sorry, I'd see it again. But I think this is a really great resource and for case managers to be able to provide clients with insight to what's available to them. And the goal, we do have a mobile version of this as well, but the goal is to really build this out so that residents are aware that this is a resource to go and search for any kind of, if you're interested in training or education opportunities, or you just need some support, that this is a resource that they can utilize. So I will stop sharing for a second and then I will return to the PowerPoint. In the meantime, do you have any questions about the resource guide or the job board? No? Okay. So where are we with the resource guide since it's been launched? So it was officially launched on April 23rd. Since then, we've hosted about 5 training sessions with over 30 different providers attended these sessions. Like I said before, this version is really geared towards case managers. And the goal is to create a resident-facing version of this in the future. So since the launch, we've had over 650 visits, which is great that people are utilizing it. And we've gotten some great feedback from the community as we continue to work to improve it and to make it the most user-friendly. And so we're really excited about that. So as we wrap up this meeting, I want to talk about our next steps. So currently we have submitted a data request to the state of Connecticut to learn more about the employment and wage outcomes for Norwalk Public School students. And we specifically want to know about those 30% of students that I mentioned earlier during this meeting that aren't enrolling in college or university immediately post-graduation. Additionally, we're really working on this marketing campaign for these two resources to really get them out into the community, to really, build them out and continue to improve them. And then finally, we have a partnership with the Fairfield County Community Foundation, and we're really working on this white paper that'll be launched in the fall or released in the fall. And it's really going to be useful in kind of informing our strategy and as we work to build out this infrastructure for our community. And during this process, there have been over 35 interviews with different Norwalk community leaders. So those are a few of the things that are to come. We really want to thank you all for taking the time to join us for our second quarterly meeting. Last thing, if you are not already subscribed, please subscribe to the Norwalk Workforce Development newsletter. This is really the best way to stay connected to what's happening in workforce development, whether you're a resident, a provider, or employer. It features a little bit of everything for everyone. This has frequent updates and opportunities. This is a monthly publication, and so very easy to sign up, very low work. And so please subscribe to the newsletter to stay up to date on our work. I want to thank you all again for joining us, and I will see you all at our next quarterly